Om Shanti. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening in all the different places. So, welcome to this Murli Study. And we are going to be looking at the day's Murli, which is 12th of December 2024. And as with the previous time, I have done a new translation of it, just so that the language is potentially more comfortable for people whose first language is English. And I will be offering some clarification along the way. And then at the end, myself and Sister Rose will take a look at some questions, including yours, which you are welcome to put into the chat on this Zoom or in the Facebook chat. So, Om Shanti. The essence, sweet children, together with knowledge and yoga, your interaction with each other should be very cordial. Do not allow yourself to be motivated by negative emotions because you are the removers of negative energy. Question. What internal pride inspires those of you who are close to the Father? And the answer, the feeling that we are taking the inheritance of being the double-crowned masters of the world from Baba. This internal pride is stable in those who are close to the Father. However, if the negative energy of violence and lust is within, then you cannot sustain this internal pride. The Father would not have regard for those with this inner corruption. Therefore, you must clean yourself from this negative energy. Your state of consciousness should be strong and pure. There's one interesting point in this Murli which started to come through, and that is that the word consciousness, in the way that Baba's using it, is very connected with the word identity. So your sense of identity must be such that you are strong and pure. The song, who came in the early morning knocking at the door of my mind? Om Shanti. Only you children can understand the meaning of this song correctly. This applies to you variably according to your spiritual efforts. And the variability among you is because many cannot grasp that the Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul, neither has a physical nor a subtle form. We have to always be aware that Baba is addressing Hindu devotees who came to Baba and who recognize him to a greater or lesser extent. But the background is that they all think of God in the form of different deities. And so he is very specific that he is not one of these gods and goddesses. He doesn't have a physical form or a subtle form. There are only those three deities who have subtle forms. They are the images of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shankar in the subtle regions. So there are many Hindus who have had visions or who have heard about visions. And especially the Vishnu figure appears in visions famously. And when Brahma Baba had a vision of Vishnu, according to the Hindu beliefs, when you get a vision of Vishnu, it means you have achieved salvation. And the image of Vishnu spoke to him and said, I am the four-armed one, and you are also. And so on the basis of his beliefs, together with what the four-armed figure of Vishnu said, he concluded that, well, that means I am God. And then Shiv Baba had to later on correct that no, you're not God. Vishnu is not God. I, the incorporeal one, am God. And you are the first, topmost human. You are Brahma. You will become Vishnu. And through your bodiless stage, which is what Shankar symbolizes, you will destroy all the negativity. So there are only three deities who have subtle forms. They are the images of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shankar in the subtle regions. The Supreme Soul is far more subtle than those. You have to be very, very subtle, extremely subtle, if you want to make contact with Shiv Baba. On the path of devotion, it is the soul who calls out to the Supreme Soul. The Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul, is the supreme among all souls. So that means souls are not all part of God. And they're all individual and separate, and he is one among them, but he is the supreme of them all. A soul would not consider his biological father to be the Supreme Soul. When one is remembering the supermundane Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul, this is considered to be soul consciousness. So you see this definition of soul consciousness. It means you are aware that you are a child of the Supreme Soul. That's called soul consciousness. It's a new definition. When you are in body consciousness, then you remember the Father with whom you have a physical relationship. So body consciousness means to identify in relationship with your physical relatives. The Supreme Father is the one with whom you have a spiritual relationship. That means consciousness is all to do with whether you're in spiritual connection with Shiv Baba or worldly connection with your relatives in terms of your sense of identity. The Supreme Father has now come. The soul knows this on the basis of understanding. Intelligence is in the intellect of the soul. Certainly, the Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul, is the supermundane Father. It should be easy for you children to explain this to others. So this whole next section is about how to explain this to new people. When people come to take the course, you ask them to fill up a form in which there is the question, who is your father? So in India, any form for any purpose that is official, one of the first questions on the form is write the name of your father. So when Baba made a form which had this question right at the beginning, it corresponds exactly to what people are used to whenever they fill up forms. Now, when asking such a question, obviously you know the answer. A teacher knows the answer to the questions he or she puts to students. The soul adopts a body and communicates through the organs of speech. The reason you ask people to fill in this form is to enable you to explain easily. The stage of consciousness of those who explain this to new people should be very elevated. You may have a good understanding of the knowledge and good yoga, but you must also interact with others cordially. So that means Baba's definition of an elevated stage is not really knowledge and yoga, but how you interact with other people. Because the danger when you put yourself in the position of a teacher, somebody who knows everything, vis-a-vis someone who's a student who doesn't know anything, there's a tendency to be arrogant or talk down to people. And Baba is saying, no, you have to be cordial. You have to see them as equals because they're your brothers and sisters, even if you know more. Spiritually appropriate interaction is possible when you are not motivated by lust, aggression, greed, attachment, or arrogance. These are strongly negative urges. You should not be motivated by negative emotions. We are those who remove negativity. Impure, violent souls are compared to evil spirits. And there are exorcists who can exorcise evil spirits. So this statement is in the context of Hinduism, where exorcism is very much part of the religion. You also know that in Catholicism, exorcism is very much part of the religion. And in the early times, people used to believe that illnesses, especially mental illnesses, is because of possession of an evil spirit. And so the priest would also be an exorcist and would exorcise the evil spirits. Then Baba says, however, the evil spirits in the form of the 5 vices can only be exorcised by the Supreme Father, the Supreme Spirit. He is the only one who removes these evil spirits from everyone. He is called the one who salvages everyone. He is the one who liberates everyone from Ravan. So Ravan is the personification of great evil. So in Hinduism, as in many other environments, these concepts of good and evil, light and dark, God, etc., is beyond the range of the regular people to conceptualize. And so the religions tended to create personifications. So Ravan is a personification. People use the expression, this one is possessed by the evil spirit of violence, another is possessed by the evil spirit of impure pride or attachment. So impure pride means arrogance. Pure pride means self-respect, self-honor. And in Hindi, you have this distinction in the language. He's the one who liberates everyone from these evil spirits is the Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul. You know that at the present time, the most powerful people in the world are the Christians. When he says Christians, he doesn't mean Christians individually. He's talking about what we used to call Christendom, the countries which classify themselves as Christian countries. even though some countries that what Baba would call Christian countries, they will call themselves secular. Just like in India, India is supposed to be secular, but many people, and very often the heads of the country, will say, no, this is a Hindu country. And so the word for the religion applies to the political aspect of work as well. So he's talking about United States and its allies. So the Christians generally speak English, and there are some very good words in the English language. Whoever is the king will ensure that his language is the language spoken in his country. Now, many people are not aware about this, but in Brahma Baba's days, English from Britain used to be called the King's English or the Queen's English. Now it's the King's English. And it was also very customary that any country which would take over another country would impose their language on the people, and then the people would be obligated to use that language. The children would study in that language. Everything was conducted in that language, and people would be penalized, sometimes even tortured, if they want to use their own original language. So this is something you may not be aware about. Nobody knows the language of the deities. When some of my daughters would go in trance and experience life in the Golden Age, they would come back and tell us everything about it. Some would even remain in trance for 2 to 4 days at a time. There should be a very intelligent trance messenger who can discern the language there and come back and tell us about it. You children must tell the story of Bharat to everyone. This land of Bharat used to be completely pure, but now it is completely impure. From being worthy of being worshipped, the people have now become worshippers. In India, there are many images of deities, but the worshippers know nothing of the biographies of those represented by the statues. We are all actors, and therefore it stands to reason that we should know the director of the drama and the main actors. This is another reason why the questionnaire is useful for you. You should write to the Pope and tell him that Christians are followers of Christ. Christ is called the Prince of Peace, as you know. And therefore, you say to the Pope, you should get the Christian politicians and scientists to stop producing and distributing weapons of mass destruction. Why are these people not accepting what you are saying? Tell the Pope that since you are the guru of all of them and you are greatly influential, why do they not accept what you are telling them? You do not know, and therefore we can tell you why they do not follow what you tell them. Baba was speaking this, Murli, in the 60s at some point, and see how very relevant it is today. So Baba says these weapons are being manufactured because the scientists are inspired by God to do this. Now, this is a very contentious sentence that we will talk about later on, but it's always been there in the Murlis that scientists believe that they are inspired by God. And now he is saying That's exactly what's going on. He is inspiring them to create nuclear weapons. You can tell him, the Pope, that heaven is being established through the souls of those who you call Adam and Eve. God knows all things. He is incognito. There should certainly be his army, and there should be some who follow his directions. This is again a very interesting point, the army of God. And there is a well-known song, Onward Christian Soldiers. So it's very much something to do with all the religions, as they operate as an army. As, for example, the Salvation Army. Obviously, they don't have guns and things, but in the time of the Crusades, it was definitely an army, and there were religious wars. You must explain this to the Pope. However, you children do not have the breadth of understanding to do this effectively. Therefore, Baba is causing the screws of your brain to get tightened up. There's an expression, somebody might have a loose screw if they behave very strangely. So Baba would know this and say, I'm going to screw up the screws on your brain so it works properly. So this is Baba the engineer. It is as if the engine of your steam train has gone cold. In Baba's day, the railways were all using steam engines to move. And so when this happens, the fireman puts coal onto the fire to make the steam powerful enough to run the engine. So this knowledge is compared with coals. So Baba is giving you the coals of knowledge to put on your engine of wisdom and understanding so that you can speak to people about this as a fully functional communication system. The Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul, is the greatest of all, and everyone will recognize and salute him ultimately. At this time, people consider the Pope to be very powerful. No one else is given as much respect as the Pope. No one knows the Father. He is incognito. It is only his children who know him and honor him. However, Maya is such that some children do not give due respect to the Father. Baba is making you into the masters of the world. But when you go out from here, this inner intoxication vanishes. Those who are close to Baba consider that they should certainly take the inheritance of the double-crowned kingdom from Baba. However, there are many of you who get possessed by the evil spirits of violence, lust, and greed. While Baba is speaking the Murli, some become very aware internally that they are still under the influence of lustful feelings. If one partner in a couple is strong, then nothing will happen. Sometimes the wife is strong, sometimes it's the husband. Whatever is happening among you reaches Baba's ears. Some of you communicate honestly about what is happening to you. You need to be honest internally and externally. Some of you look honest externally, but internally you are false. Many storms disturb you. Some write, today, Baba, a storm of lust came to me, but I did not succumb. If you do not write about this to Baba, on the one hand, you will experience some form of punishment, And on the other hand, your lustful desire becomes habitual. Eventually, you will fall into sexual activities. Baba has good hopes for you children to maintain your celibacy. Although you may be under the influence of bad omens today, but tomorrow they wither, and it is as if their throat got cut. So they're dead. That means they must have gone against an aspect of the practice. You must remain honest in every aspect, and then you will become the masters of the land of truth. When you are dishonest, then your inner illnesses increase and you will be harmed. Regarding the questionnaire, you must prepare it in a strategic manner. The question should say, what is your relationship with the Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul? And if they write, He is my Father, it implies there is no question of God being omnipresent. God is the giver of salvation to all. He is the purifier. He is the one who takes all to liberation and liberation in life. Therefore, he must have come and given spiritual knowledge for that purpose. If this is the case, then you should know his biography. If you do not know, then you would not be able to claim your inheritance from him. If he is your father, then definitely you should receive an inheritance. Then put forward a second question. Do you know Prajapita Brahma and his mouth-born progeny? The one who is called Saraswati is the goddess of knowledge. She is the world mother. In that case, there should be her children, and there should be a father also. The one who gives knowledge is that father. Now, who are the father of humanity and the world mother? The one who is called Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, is not the goddess of knowledge at that time. And she is Lakshmi in the golden age, the same soul Saraswati in the confluence age. So Brahma and Saraswati become the god and goddess of knowledge, and therefore you children should become the masters of heaven. So you get knowledge, and the knowledge teaches you how to become the ones with the sanskaras to be masters of heaven. It's a process. Now it is the confluence. It is the water pot of Aquarius. This is Kumbha. There is the Kumbha Mela. So see what happens there. There is a vast difference between the interpretations of the meaning of Kumbha Mela there and the interpretation that we give here. They, that is the sannyasis, the Hindu devotees, they revere the confluence of the rivers and the ocean. Here, it is the confluence of the human Ganges rivers who have emerged from the ocean of knowledge. So there the rivers of water go to the ocean, and here the rivers come out of the ocean. Another question that should be asked is, who is the purifier of the impure? You know that this is a contentious issue, and therefore the subject must be raised. From the knowledge given through the mother and father, you can become the deities of knowledge. How can one experience satisfaction by claiming that God is omnipresent? Now you are receiving the fruit of your devotion. Now God is teaching, and therefore your unsuccessful searching is over. So this is all points for argument about the omnipresence of God, and that if you have this idea of God being omnipresent, there's no consummation of your love for God or your connection to God, and therefore there's no satisfaction. Now God is teaching, and therefore your unsuccessful searching is over. Baba says, children, may you attain the bodiless stage. So you can understand and know that God is incorporeal, but you cannot easily make contact unless you are on the same level, which means you must be in your bodiless stage. The soul has received knowledge, and now the soul says, I am to return back to the home to be with God. This refers again to the necessity for nuclear bombs, and destruction is not possible to stop the process of reincarnation in one fell swoop unless all people leave the body all at once. And the only way to make that happen is nuclear bombs, big ones. So after that comes the fruit of knowledge. So first you go back to the soul world, nirvana, and then you come again to the earth in its pristine new state, and that is heaven, the fruit of knowledge. A kingdom is being established. This is something that requires much detailed explanation. This questionnaire is very helpful to enable you to discuss these matters with new people. So you should all have these in your pockets. Those of you who are competent in doing service will recognize the value of the questionnaire. The Father has to make a lot of effort for you children. The Father says, children, make your future elevated. Otherwise, for every kalpa, your status would be less than it could be. And every cycle is identical, so make sure you use every moment well. Just as the Father is becoming an emperor and an empress, both, in the same way, you children should make sure that you are becoming that also. Again, this takes you away from identification, gender bias or gender identification. You're here to become both Lakshmi and Narayan, and not one or the other. Baba says, however, for this, you need great faith in yourself. A king has to be very powerful. In the golden age, there is happiness, prosperity, everything is good. Anyone who becomes a king by birth has to have made considerable donations and given charity in the name of God in their previous birth. As a result of this karma, they became a king, and all his subjects operate according to his will. At the present time, there is no king of India. The system of government is democracy. Because of this, the country is weak. So democracy in India is not normally a two-party system, but maybe a 20 or 30-party system. And so it's very unwieldy, and the head of government keeps changing, the parties keep changing. So from Baba's experience, democracy is a very unstable arrangement, and the democracy was established immediately after independence from British rule. And British rule was a kingdom and quite autocratic. And then democracy became, in comparison, a big free-for-all. And so Brahma Baba disapproves of it. Baba knows that many of his children are attacked by internal storms, but they do not speak of this to Baba. You should write what kind of storms attack you, and then Baba could give you some advice. Baba would consider your circumstances and advise you accordingly. But you don't write to Baba, nor do you discuss this with any of your friends, BK friends, or companions. You should share your situation with Baba. So Baba's a good psychologist. He knows what is required if you want to become free from any addictions. And a very important aspect is speaking about it. Acha, to the sweetest, beloved, long lost and found children, love, remembrance, and good morning from the mother, the father, Bap Dada. And the spiritual father says namaste to the spiritual children. The spiritual children say namaste to the spiritual father. So I'm not going to go through the night class. We will just stick to this. And so let me complete here and invite Sister Rose to come on and we will talk about it. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, Sister Denise.
Om Shanti. Do I have you in? Yes, there we are, two of us together. How are you, Sister Rose?
Very well, Sister Denise. Again, thank you for this translation that you did. I noticed that there are some words which you translated in a different way from what we have been very used to. For example, I noticed evil spirit, you used negative energy. And so exorcists, the ones who remove negative energy. I think it's more understandable, at least for me. And good behavior is cordial. Again, something that is easier to figure out. You did explain this a while ago, but I want to clarify about the stage of consciousness of those who explain this to new people should be very elevated. And you explained elevated stage as being or the interaction that we have with people, especially to new people, looking at them as equals, using soul conscious eye. So that is elevated stage, not looking down on them, because it's like we know and they don't.
Well, it's very easy to get into a kind of arrogance, maybe because of impatience if somebody doesn't understand something that you think is obvious. But, you know, if you put yourself in the position of a teacher, you have to take it seriously, in my opinion. And a teacher nowadays is different from a teacher in previous times in that in Brahma Baba's day, teachers always looked at students as ignorant and small, and they would punish them. And This is no longer considered very useful in education, and the teacher is accompanying the student to understand the subject. And I think it's very suitable for us to do that too. And anyway, Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba never talked down to us. So why should we talk down to anybody else? And I think also a lot of the words used presuppose that it's some person of authority talking to teenagers, but we're not. We're adults talking to each other. So the language has to reflect that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Thanks for that. um, and there is, as you said, the contentious point. Those weapons are being manufactured because the scientists are inspired by God to do this.
Yes. Now, people who are involved in religions or anybody who thinks about God has presuppositions about God, that God wants to make everything nicey, sugar and spicy, and everybody should be sweet. And anybody who makes nuclear bombs is by definition a bad person. And now they're thinking about Oppenheimer, who created the nuclear bomb and the hydrogen bomb, and he tested one on Nagasaki and the other one on Hiroshima, and he found the nuclear bomb was better than the hydrogen bomb. So it's like, excuse me, what's this? But from Shiv Baba's point of view, it's a movie. And people watch movies all the time. It's a big industry. And a lot of the movies are all about action and violence and blowing everything up as much as possible. And if you look on the news media, same thing. Very often they will put violins and orchestras to add to the sound of explosions and make the reality just like a movie. And he says, well, you need to think of it as a movie and not uh, imagine that you understand things better than God, because your understanding is extremely limited and especially limited to sense perception. So you think that death is, under any circumstances, something bad which should be prevented. And he says that I have a situation here which requires me to bring all the souls to the soul world all at once and stop the process of reincarnation. And the only way to do that is to have everyone leave the body all at once. And the only way to do that is to have a technical instrument which will do that. And the only things that do that are nuclear bombs. And there's enough nuclear bombs to destroy the world many, many times over. So that should probably work. And then on another occasion, he said that, we've got to reset the natural world. So we have to clean the oceans, we have to take out all the pollution, we have to fix the weather patterns and stabilize the planet. And the nuclear bombs are very good for detonating the tectonic plate movement, because we need to have cleansing of the earth through massive tsunamis and volcanoes and earthquakes and really begin everything again. And all the elements of matter have to be recharged. Even the sun has to be recharged. So the only way you can do that is through these nuclear weapons. And so people don't think like that. But God is not a human. And he's thinking about something that is unthinkable for people. But he starts talking to us about it over a long period of time. And gradually we get to understand that, yeah, he has a point there. And one thing he said is that it's not possible for there to be full-on nuclear war until every person on Earth requests it. That means things have to get really bad before they all want that. And it's a very, very slow process. And now we're seeing this year more effects of climate change, more wars that don't look like they're going to end anytime soon or in any comfortable solution. So we're beginning to see these things that he's talking about, and therefore it starts to make sense what he's saying about, he is getting, and he says not only he's inspiring scientists, he's inspiring political leaders, religious leaders, all sorts of things. He's inspiring us as well to do what we're doing. And he gives us free will, as everyone knows, so we need to be able to conduct ourselves suitably. But he says you're free, you do what you want, everybody's free, but when you feel that you're doing something sacred and you are inspired by God and you take it seriously, then that becomes who you are.
So it's to our advantage that we also adapt this lens in a sense that Baba is using to look at all the events that are happening, such as he said, death or distraction, and therefore not to be body conscious about it.
Yes, he gave us this blessing. May you attain a bodiless stage. So if you're bodiless, you don't have sense perception. And human morality is based on sense perception. If it feels good, it must be good. If it feels bad, it must be bad. And what he's saying is there are some things that feel good, but they're bad, and some things that feel bad, but they're good. And that's because you are evaluating things on a different criteria than sense perception. And then what he's also saying is, anyway, you're immortal. Anyway, you've been through this many, many times. So the key thing is to have the state of consciousness and the inner power so that you can get through this without getting traumatized. And if you don't prepare yourself in this way that he's recommending, you will get traumatized. And one of the things that I have been hearing from different BKs who are in very dire circumstances due to political situation, I hear some of them saying, we're not ready, we can't handle this, we are afraid, what's going on, what are we supposed to do? And, when you're in a situation that's perfectly fine, you don't know whether or not you're ready. It's really when you're in a difficult situation that you can evaluate yourself. And everybody gets a turn. So at the moment, it's the turn of some people, but it will be everybody's turn sooner or later, one way or the other, because without those circumstances, you can't evaluate yourself. And I think that he's very equitable, and so that all of us sooner or later will have to face something like this and get real, Am I sounding too horrible?
The follow-up question here from Zoom is exactly how does Baba inspires the scientists?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I can only speculate because I have no idea because he doesn't say. But one approach might be that this part in drama is already in their soul, and he may sort of send some vibrations to wake up this part And this may be described as inspiring, because he doesn't inspire people to do something that they don't know how to do or that they've never done before, because he's very much about saying that these are fixed in drama, and these everybody has their own fixed part, and so, for example, us who become BKs, I mean, we have to also understand, well, that's also a fixed part in drama. And many of us say, we didn't have any choice. And you can't run away. You might not like this or that from time to time, but, you've been, as it were, kidnapped. And here we are by our own free will. But yet there's something inside us which is like a destiny. And so you have to play out your destiny and become equanimous about it. That means you are your feelings about it. You don't hate it. You don't adore it. You accept it, and you take it seriously, and you fulfill it. Something like that.
Thanks, Sister Denise. Some words also that I noticed you use the different translation is the usually the vices known as the anger, greed, ego, attachment. You used instead violence or aggression instead of anger.
Yeah, because you see, these words are there in the Gita, and they were put there by human beings who are moralistic and finger-wagging types who want to control other people's behavior. And this is a human thing. And also, these words are emotive words. And what happens is that a lot of BKs take all these things very literally. And if they have a feeling that they label as anger, then they feel like they should suppress it or deny it or something. And because they are trying to limit themselves in terms of feelings, they end up in denial or very suppressed, and you cannot develop spiritually by doing things like that. So I thought it'd be better to use words that apply to the acts rather than the feelings. So aggression, violence, theft, I could say something like that for greed, because it's normal to feel different feelings, but you don't have to act on them.
Yeah.
And what people generally think is that if you have the feeling, that's the sin. If you do it, that's the sin. If you have a feeling, then you have the option to either put it into action or work it through. But there's no point in pretending it's not there or denying it or suppressing it, because you will damage yourself psychologically. And then when you don't work through your psychological issues, and everybody has them, then you cannot move to the stage of developing yourself spiritually, and you just operate like a quite unenlightened sort of religious, pushy way of treating people. And I don't think that's what God came to earth to do, because people are already doing that. So why does he need to make it do the same thing? He never does what other people do.
Sister Denise, you mentioned in other sessions that God is not concerned with how people behave.
Well, he does say in this Murli, you should interact with each other cordially, and because in this sentences that he's giving, he's teaching us how to teach other people. And in that respect, he needs us to behave in a certain way. And be cordial with people because he sees there's a problem with that and people are not doing that. But in terms of, how there are people who do micromanagement of people's behavior. Do you know what I mean by that? He's not concerned about that. You're a good BK or a bad BK or whatever. But when you are representing him in an official capacity as a teacher, then he wants to be represented properly. And then whatever you do with your brothers and sisters, that's a family matter, and then it's your karma. So then you have to pay for your own mistakes, and that's not his problem in that sense,
Yeah. Thanks. Again, the point about the effort, that our effort varies, usually, which is usually translated number wise effort makers. Uh, Here you said effort varies to the extent that we recognize Baba.
Yes. Because nobody knows the meaning of number wise. It's not an English word or a Hindi word, it's a made up word. And so then people have questions. What is this? And it's his word because he is always, if you remember, he was always trying to, as a teacher, figure out the order of the class people because he's making rosaries. He wants to know number one, number two, number three, etc. And you get exams and you get a particular percentage. And so there is a listing of who's the top and who's the bottom and who's in between where. And so that is what he means by number wise. But then when it comes to spiritual effort, again, you have this word effort, the English word effort, for Purusharat, you see. And Purusharat, if you translate Purusharat as effort, usually in India, they use the word tapas for effort, which comes from tapasya. And Purusharat, as far as I think about this word, it's more like anything you do for the sake of the self, because the word Purush means the self, the soul, and Arat means for the sake of. And so it also depends on your capability, how much bhakti you have done in 63 births, how subtle you are in terms of your thinking process. And there is a variation if people have a tamopradhan intellect, which is very gross and cannot deal with concepts, they just can't figure it out at all. And others who naturally are able to understand subtle abstract matters. And it's very, very complicated, and people are who they are. And but it's very difficult for a person to recognize themselves or recognize someone else. A lot of people think they're better than they really are or worse than they really are. Very rarely can somebody evaluate themselves exactly as they are. But he can see us as we are. And he sees us number wise, or I put it variable. Because also it's a matter of when you're talking to people whose sense of self is up and down, who are highly sensitive, who have been traumatized by religious sort of persecution, not persecution because you are in this religion as opposed to that religion, but persecution in the sense that you are a horrible sinner and you should be going to hell, this sort of persecution. And that's a trauma which comes from religious backgrounds of certain types. And so to enable people to feel less judged, I think the word variable makes more sense when you're thinking about it and putting yourself in the middle of all these other variations. Mm.
Thanks. There is a question from Zoom. um, this is about the point that now God is teaching, and therefore your unsuccessful searching is over. So, if there is non consummation of love for God, then there is no satisfaction. Please elaborate.
Yes. Well, the aim of a traditional Hindu devotee is to meet God and to for this meeting to be ecstatic and magic, and you kind of disappear into this intense experience, and people desire this. This is the reason why a lot of people take drugs, because they get this high, you see, and they want that. But if you take drugs, then you have a nice high, but then it's followed by a horrible low, and you never get the same high the second or third or fourth or 100th time. It's only the first time. But people want this. This is a motivation why people are looking for God. They want that ecstasy. And okay, so they've been looking for God because they want an experience. And again, and you see, a lot of BKs are very, very into this word experience. And this is also because Baba used to often say, well, they need an experience, so give them an experience. And then we invented meditation commentaries. And, excuse me, people had a nice experience. But it's like a momentary thing. And it doesn't actually prove or disprove that you've met God in the sense of you know who He is, you have a relationship, He's your teacher, your mother, your father, your beloved, everything. And this is something that grows slowly over time during the confluence age, where we have interaction with Him in many, many different levels of intimacy and understanding, and He makes us part of a spiritual family and school and all of this, you see. And so when people come and meet Baba, or they recognize Baba, there is this word recognition, which I think is important. Then everything that you were doing in the path of bhakti was for the purpose of meeting God. So once you've met God, you're not trying to meet God anymore. Mm-hmm. And you do not meet God as a result of the different devotional practices. Sometimes he says, you cannot meet me through the scriptures. You cannot meet me by doing a donation and charity and all of this. So how do you meet God? You meet God when He calls you. So we say, did you find God or did He find you? And since He's pretty difficult to find because we're always looking in the wrong place, we have to conclude on the whole that He found us. And once He finds us, then He changes through the teachings everything we thought of about who God is, what God is, who we are, what's going on, what's good and bad. Everything changes. And this is why I said your search was unsuccessful. You cannot be successful because it assumes that if you do this many mantras, then you will meet God. No, you have to do all those things because you meet God when you've done them all, but it doesn't mean that they enable you to meet God. It's a bit paradoxical, but it's kind of like that.
Sister Denise, so far these are the questions for tonight, but I remember last week there was a question left unasked, and that was, how does Baba lock your intellect?
I don't think he locks it, but I think it gets locked. And
Mhm.
it's a phenomenon. When you uh, go against him in one way or the other, because you don't agree, because you can't see it, it's like you had it and you lost it. And then when you start to go against him in one way or the other, then in a sense, one of the things he does is he distances himself from you. And this is one of the ways in which he guides people, is when you're doing the right thing, he comes close, yeah, this is good, keep doing this. And then if you're not doing the right thing, he'll kind of distance himself, because the one thing that you don't like is when God is far away, or you feel abandoned or something like that. So then you will put two and two together and say, oh, well, I did this and I did that, which was against, and that's why this is going on. Then you have to, because he's pretty picky. And then if you do that, you want to get back in his good books again.
Mhm.
And then you have to do a few things so that your relationship is restored. It's like any human relationship. You if you're unfaithful to your life partner, then they will get pretty fed up about that, and there'll be a breakdown in the relationship, and you have to repair it. And this happens in your interaction with God. It can break down, and you have to repair it. But he knows who you are. And sometimes he likes to play games because he's had 5,000 years in the soul world and just doing a few good things for the devotees. But he really enjoys this confluence age where he interacts with all of us. And it's a bit of I call it a divine comedy or a tragicomedy or something like this. And yeah, it's what it is. And this happens. And then you see if someone turns away, then they can no longer get onto that level anymore. And I've seen it in quite a few people. There are some people for whom it breaks down because of some karmic thing that they have to get through, and then when that's done, they're back again. And that's because of karma. It's not because they consciously, voluntarily disliked him and went against him and like that. So there's just, all these different things that happen in human relationships. If something goes wrong in your relationship with another human being, can be because of many things, and some of them are unforgivable and some of them are forgivable. He's a being. He's not a nice idea or something like that, but he's not a
Sister,
human.
okay, Sister Denise, one last question that came in from Zoom. What do you think about, or what does it mean to keep the home in one eye and the golden age deity form in the other eye?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something he says from time to time. Because you have what's in your eye is where you're going, right? You have two eyes and you're going to two places. So one aim is the soul world and the other aim is the golden age. So you got to remember you're going in both places. And interestingly, recently, Baba had asked in an Abhyat Murli um, to BKs who seem to have this idea that all we have to do is become, influential and famous in India now and have lots of VIPs on our side. And then we can just go and become kings and queens without going through the process of changing the body and going to the soul world. So you cannot do that, because that's not it's not going to happen. You have to be able to let go of everything and return to the light. And also, you have to establish yourself in remembrance. You have to finish your negative karma. You have to create pure karma. You have to do everything necessary to prepare for your next 21 births in the Golden and Silver Ages. So you have to keep two aims. So you have two eyes for that.
There are no shortcuts.
No. That's why he gives us time.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sister Denise. And may I say it's the way you presented it in paragraph forms is very easy. I mean, easier to read actually.
Mm.
And of course, the words that you used in the translation, the way it was translated, is also personally I find it more easier to understand.
Good. Well, this was my intention, and we will make it available. I didn't make it available except to the translators before, but I will make it available now, and then people can have a look at it again. So thank you very much, and thanks to
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we'll hopefully have this again next Tuesday. And yeah, I do have another event. And we might have to do it a little bit later because my other event finishes at 1:00. And if I go right into this without a little break, or we might shift the day to a Monday or a Wednesday or something, because it's never happens in my calendar that one day becomes available forever and eternally. So I hope that will not bother you too much. But we will.
We'll wait for your confirmation, Sister Denise.
Okay, yeah. Well, what would be better, the next day or the previous day for you?
Any day is fine with me.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss it and I will let everybody know, but it mostly will be the next day, the Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you everyone, and let us finish with a moment of silence, yeah?
Thank you.
Thank you. Shanti. Thank you everyone, and see you the next time. Om Shanti.